I hope they enjoyed tonight's video. Tonight what we're going to be doing is we're going to be cleaning the movement, and then after that we're going to be oiling the movement in our next video. Now when we talk about cleaning the movement, we're not going to be cleaning the case. I'm not going to be cleaning the crystal or the retaining pieces or the hands or the dial itself. So all we're going to be doing is we're going to be cleaning these pieces that we looked at in our last video. Here's the movement. Now as we looked at in our previous video, according to the Timex instruction manual, after we take these pieces off the movement, that's as far as we go as far as disassembly. The mainspring remains in the remaining part of the watch. It does not get removed. Neither does the hairspring here. They remain inside. And as we looked at last time and learned last time, that according to Timex, the mainspring doesn't need to be oiled. It is permanently oiled, and that's very different from, say, a Seiko or any other kind of watch. So the instructions, once again according to Timex themselves, say do not disassemble and remove the mainspring. Keep it in the watch. And for more information on that, I encourage you to watch our previous video in which I go into more detail on that, as well as show the instruction book. My method of cleaning these Timex movements might be different than yours, and you might decide that the way that you do it is better, and that's okay. There's many different ways of doing this, and this is just one method. What we're going to do is we have these Ziploc bags here. And you can source these anywhere. I get mine by the case of about 1,000 of them at a time, and then at that point it will cost hardly anything. So in each one of these bags we're going to carefully put, right, okay. Now as I'm doing this, remember that after we do this, I'm going to be oiling this. So this is going to seem initially like, oh my gosh, he's drying out the movement or whatever our concern might be. But no, don't worry about that. We're going to come back and we're going to oil what needs to be oiled. Once again, with all my videos, if I can do it, you can do it. There's certainly nothing special about me. If there's something that I can do, then you can do it too. In fact, you might get to the point where you can do it a whole lot better than I can. We have a helicopter flying by the house right now, so just kind of ignore that. Okay. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is in each one of these, what our goal is to remove any grease or dirt that's on these. These were all assembled with a certain amount of grease or oil, and over 50, 60, 70 years it gets hardened or kind of gummed up, and we want to completely remove that. So what we're going to be using is a lighter fluid, and it's actually a common way to do this. If you want to, you can buy much more expensive horology. Horology is working with watches fluid, and it costs 5 or 6 times more, but the ingredients are almost exactly the same and in the same proportions. This is just a non-fancy way of getting the job done just as well. And you can buy this pretty much anywhere. Now, when I'm using this, I have the window wide open. I don't like to breathe this in, and it is highly flammable. And I don't need to tell anybody this, but just keep it away from children or you know, whomever. You probably want to keep it in your workshop. Maybe you have an outside garage or someplace. Then I'm just going to put some in here. Okay. Here it is. See, it's all nice and doing good in there. It looks like a fish in a fishbowl almost. So it's in there. It looks like I put a little bit too much lighter fluid in there, but that won't hurt anything. And that lighter fluid is working. It's going to do its job. We're going to leave it in there for probably about 15 minutes. And then every once in a while we'll just kind of jostle it a little bit. Okay, and we're going to put it here in this cup. Alright, now we go to the next little piece. And kind of the same thing. The only thing I'm not going to use quite as much. It doesn't really matter, but there's no use using more. You just got to be careful with this stuff. You don't want it in your eyes and you don't want to breathe it in a whole lot. Okay, that's probably more than enough. Let's see what we got here. Yep, there it is. Lighter fluid will, for lack of a better word, kind of disintegrate or melt away any old grease. It's kind of like those of you who work on cars and your hands get really greasy, and maybe you've been working with axle grease or whatever it is, and you do something that you shouldn't do is you quickly put a little bit of gasoline on your hands, wash your hands, and it comes right off, and then you wash with soap. But I try not to do that anymore because it's not healthy at all. But that's the same principle as lighter fluid. It just removes any old grease and oils, dirt. There it is. And alright, we'll kind of put this over here in this cup. And now we go on to this. Now this is made out of brass, and this will not, it's not going to hurt it. Worst come to worst, it might change the color of it slightly. I don't think it will, but it might change the color of it. And on these bottles, of course, you just use this little nozzle. That's self-explanatory. Okay. And then we just put it in there. Okay, then we close that up. And then we lift it up. There it is. And then we move on to this. Now this is the one that I noticed that does have some grease that's very obvious on it. So this one certainly needs to be cleaned. If you do it this way, this particular method, you're not breathing in a whole lot of chemicals. You know, you really aren't. It's all sealed up. You know, of course you do some. Then I go ahead and seal that down. Let me get that where it needs to be. Alright. So we put that there. And then now we're on to our movement. These, the main body of the movement is not as delicate as you might think it is. Timex movements are kind of tough. The only part of this that's a little bit delicate is the hairspring. We have that facing up here. In other words, I'm not resting the weight of the movement against the hairspring. The hairspring is facing up. This is really, that's the only part of this in which you have to be careful. But the other ones, obviously you don't want to warp them, but boy, that's kind of hard to do. If you're careful, it won't happen. So you might have to put just a little bit more in this one. I don't need to put a whole lot in. And then I close that down. Then we close that down. Kind of swish it around a little Alright, then we put that in a cup. And then what we're going to do is for about 20 minutes, every once in a while, we'll just kind of jostle this and shake this. And that's going to clean it. Then after that, we're going to go back with these. I should have had one of these out already, so please bear with me. I've been using these in our previous videos, but they're kind of like Q-tips. But the tip of them is really cool. It's not made out of cotton, it's made out of synthetic, but it's real soft. Can't possibly scratch anything. But if you use cotton, it'll leave little pieces of cotton behind. So you want to use these. And as I've shown many times before, you just go on eBay, you type in MA-101 fine, and then eventually these will come up. They're real handy. Alright, so after 20 minutes, what we're going to do is I'm going to be looking at each one of these parts under magnification to see if I see anything, any grease or any dirt that's still on the individual pieces, and then we'll dislodge it with this, and then we're going to do a final rinse on each one of them, and then we'll progress from there. So these have been in there for about 20 minutes, and we've been doing this, and then just kind of doing that, kind of jostling them a little bit. Okay, now it's time to take them out and use my tweezers here. Alright, so all of our pieces now are on here. And I'm going to put these little bags outside. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look over all these little pieces with my magnifying glass and see if there's any dirt or grease that's still on there. Now when you're doing this, there will be discoloring on the metal, and that doesn't hurt anything, but that isn't, grease. It's just discoloring. But I'm making sure. See, there was just a little bit of dirt on there. When you're doing this, obviously, I don't want to hurt any of these little gear tips here, wheel tips. I don't want to do that. My goodness, if you're doing this, which I don't, but if you're doing this to a watch like a Rolex or a beautiful Bulova, man, the stress level goes up tremendously, because on those watches you can't, it's beyond, you don't just want the watch to work perfectly, it has to look perfect, even the movement, and that's just that'd be very difficult with those shiny beautiful movements that some of those old watches had and current watches. Just a little bit of so there is, can that thing see the tip of that?
Yeah.
Alright, now we gotta look at it under a magnifying glass again. I'm not really seeing anything. But while we're doing this, now, as you can tell, there's that little raised area there, that little tiny rectangle. And I want to make sure that's clean. I want to make sure everything on it's clean, but it'd be a good place for a little bit of grease to get trapped. And it makes me nervous picking that up. I don't want to hurt the edges on it. And my dog is making noises, so please forgive me. I have to do these videos in the most well lit place in the house. Okay, so that got up some dirt. Okay, now we go back here. Something else I try to do when I'm working on watches or learning about watches, I try to maintain a real humble attitude, and that I'm constantly learning, and I find better ways of doing things by listening to comments, by watching videos, by listening to people who have been doing it longer than I, or maybe not as long as I have. I'm just an ordinary guy and constantly learning. Okay, so we're just kind of cleaning underneath that crown. And I mean, just a touch of lighter fluid here. Alright, then down here on the stem, this is the place that goes into the movement. It doesn't hurt to go back over this. It's probably just fine, but I think that's good. I'm going to have to double check it here in a second. Okay. Now here's this little copper piece, and this piece is... I mean, I have the luxury of having extra movements, but still it's a pride issue. I hate to make mistakes and have to rely upon parts movements for pieces. I just a lot of people don't have that benefit, so I try to never warp these, bend them. That's why you have to be, that's why I'm going so slow and I'm so careful here. And it's true, it's made out of copper or a copper alloy brass type thing. So I was expecting it to be slightly discolored from the lighter fluid, but it actually turned out more copper colored. It's pure copper colored, so I guess it had been tarnished. Alright, let's go ahead and go to this piece here. Got the same thing. Try to make sure I get that center. I try not to use my fingers, and I'm not very good with those plastic glove things that cover your fingertips. I can't feel, and I can't... it just doesn't work for me. Okay, let's try to turn it over. There it goes. Try to steady it. Try to get a little bit. I think that pretty well has it on those. Let me see. When you're going to all this trouble, you might as well get it done just about as good as you possibly can. I mean, it's a lot of trouble to go through and then not get it done right. Okay. Now we still have this piece here, but I don't have any more moisture, so. at least we're dislodging all the dirt, and then we're going to put it through a final rinse. Kind of begin to wish I hadn't used this plastic bag. This white part is kind of coming up a little bit. I'm not overly worried about that because we're going to do an overall final rinse, and that's okay. I was expecting that to come out earlier. I'm glad it came out, so now it gets a much better cleaning. Okay, that's going to be good. Man, I'm glad that came out. I forgot to take that out, so that's good. Got a little bit lucky there. If you do this with a dry Q-tip looking thing, I don't see how it could possibly clean it. It needs to be, some moisture there, which makes sense. You're not sweeping it away, you're trying to pick it up. There's these little tiny gears, and I just want to make sure that I do it to the best of my ability. There's something about this when you have a job and you just do it to the best of your effort. There's a good feeling about that, even though it's a Timex. It means something to your customer, or maybe it means something to you or a relative that has great sentimental value to it. So don't look at it as just a $50 Timex watch or $100 Timex watch. Think of it as something that's very special to your customer or your family member. Otherwise, they wouldn't have brought it to you. They just want their watch to, be able to work again and then keep halfway decent time. Timexes, when they're set right, they really do keep remarkably good time. Alright, that one, once it goes through its final rinse, I think it'll be just fine. Okay, now we come to this piece, the main part, and we'll notice all these places where the gears go on. We'll make sure all those are clean. This is, remember our number one rule from our previous lessons is you don't want to make anything worse than it was originally. So I'm being very careful. I don't want to make this movement worse. It's easy to make things worse. You can bend something, you can, oh man, these are delicate, overall watch movements are, and if you get rushed, or you feel rushed, then, things go south in a hurry. Here's this little wheel here. I'm trying to make it clean, but I don't want to damage it. I don't want to do anything to mess it up. Okay, we actually got off. Okay, now let me turn this thing over. Again, when you use these, you don't have to worry about any little pieces of cotton coming off. Whatever you do, I'd really recommend never ever use cotton when doing this. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to dislodge anything that might be a little bit stuck. Okay, the final rinse will, and even at this point I'm not going to touch that hairspring there. It just, we have to rely upon the first rinse and the second rinse to get that clean. That's very, very delicate. There's these little circles of wire that make that spring, and if you bend those just slightly, it'll take you hours to unbend it, and even then you may not get it done right. It's just a real unpleasant. So you gotta be really careful with that. All right, so here's our pieces. Let's see here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then that, but that originally came out of this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put these through a final rinse in much the same way we did the first time. We would put them in each one in an individual bag. Use your lighter fluid. Once again, swish them around in there, and then take them out, put them on a piece of plastic, and then wait for it to dry. I was thinking about using this here. I'll tell you why I'm not going to use this at any stage, for several reasons. The air that comes out of here could easily blow one of these pieces away, and I don't want to go looking for it. Second of all, there could be dirt that's literally inside this rubber bladder here, and then I'd be blowing dirt into the movement or blowing dirt onto these. This doesn't have a filter, so that's something that kind of concerns me. Maybe there's some old rubber that's kind of aged inside of this, and so I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to let it air dry. Because it's lighter fluid, it takes at the most maybe 30 seconds for these pieces to dry. So at this stage, what you do to your watch and what we're going to do to our watch is we're going to put them back into these old bags, put them in lighter fluid, and then once we rinse them out really good for 20 minutes, then we will lay them back out like this, wait for them to dry. After they have dried, then we put them back into other bags to await their oiling, which will be our next video. I'm not going to show you the next step because it's exactly like the step we did before. But in our next video, what we're going to do is we're going to be reassembling the watch and oiling it. These watches have to be oiled. It's like parts of any kind of engine. These are engines. They're just manually wound engines. So they need to be oiled. Otherwise, it's metal upon metal. It'll come to a halt and it'll cause damage, and it just won't run or won't run correctly. And so it'll just need a little bit of oil, and not only oil, but the right type of oil. There's probably 20 different types of watch lubrications and grease, probably more than that. So you have to use the one that Timex recommends. You have to use the correct one. And if you're going to all this trouble, you don't want to be lazy and just use any old oil. You want to use the correct watch oil for this application. Okay, well I guess that's about it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. And like I've already mentioned, in our next video we're going to learn about oiling this movement, where to oil it, and we're going to be going through the Timex manual itself. I never wing all this stuff. I go precisely step by step by step, according to the Timex manual. Exactly where to oil it, how much to oil it, and what oil to use. Okay, well, I guess I'll see you next time. I would like to mention that my wife and I are proud to be Christians. We hope that you will also become a Christian if you're not a Christian already. It's a peaceful feeling knowing where you will spend eternity. I am a sinner. Speaking of myself, I am a sinner. I do not deserve to go to heaven by any means. So Jesus had to rescue me from the penalty of my sins. And because he is sinless, I am able to go to heaven based upon his account, not based upon my filthy life, but based upon his purity. So he was born, and during his life he did not sin. He died upon the cross, the punishment that I deserved, and then he was raised again. And all those who trust in him, believe in him, and accept him will have eternal life. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you have a good night.